If you ever visited or live in New York City, you've encountered the Metropolitan Transit Authority. The MTA services nearly 5.7 million riders every day on the subway alone. That's over 1.75 billion every year. This doesn't even include the 2.4 million daily bus riders, an additional 764 million riders that use the system every year. In New York City, the MTA is huge, a vital part of many New Yorkers' lives. The system spans 5,710 buses, making 16,350 stops across 324 bus routes, and 22 subway routes spanning 472 stations across 665 miles of track. It has by far the largest ridership in the United States, more than doubling nearest rival Los Angeles. The history of transit in New York City dates back to the 19th century and was dominated by private industry. The system looked far different than today. Starting with horse-drawn carriages, as the century progressed, it evolved into a system backboned by above-ground rail and the streetcar. Originally, these trolleys were pulled by horses, but as the century came to a close, horses were replaced by electricity. By 1920, trolley tracks spanned 1,344 miles. However, their era was soon to come to a close. During Fiorello LaGuardia's mayorship in the 1930s, there was a massive push by his administration to roll out a fleet of new buses, a cheaper, more versatile, modern alternative to the streetcar. While the trolley was still on its rise, the modern New York City subway system was born. Soon after the city of New York consolidated to its modern structure in 1898, it embarked on two major partnerships with the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, or IRT, and the Brooklyn Rapid Transit Company, or BRT. The city would raise funds to construct the subway tunnels, and these two companies would operate the system. As the century turned, however, transit began to become a very unprofitable business. To make matters worse, fare increases of any kind were met with large protests from riders and lawmakers, not much different than what happens today. LaGuardia's election as mayor marked a large turn for New York City, away from the corruption of the Tammany Hall machine. Transit companies were no longer able to receive preferential treatment from bribed Tammany politicians. As calls for public control of transit grew, both sides began to navigate to the table. In 1940, the city gained control of all train lines. Although there have been minor additions to the system since then, the scope of the subway system of 1940 is largely identical to the system of today. Throughout the next decade, the city moved to purchase the bus lines, gaining complete control of transit in New York City. In 1953, the New York State Legislature created the MTA as we know it today, as a public corporation to operate this transit network. What was unprofitable in the 1940s has turned into a budgetary canyon today. A whopping 43% of the MTA's yearly operating budget comes from government assistance. This does not include the current $32.46 billion capital campaign that the MTA is currently using to fund improvements and renovations throughout the system. A massive 57% of funding for this program comes from federal, state, and city assistance. Of the remaining cost that the MTA is responsible for, 30% comes from MTA-issued bonds, contributing to what is projected to be a $43 billion debt load for the agency over the next 7 years. This only further increases the MTA's operating deficit, since already 16% of the operating budget is used for servicing the current debt. The past year has been marked with heavy criticism for the MTA and the service they provide, prompting a reinvigorated focus on the capital program led by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. However, any fare increase is marked by heavy protest. Improvements are wanted, but riders don't want to pay, causing the agency to head into even deeper reliance on government assistance. As the struggle continues, so will political strife, as strap hangers, the city, and the state all fight over who will ultimately pay the bill. Despite this, the MTA paints a bright future. From the construction of the 7th Avenue subway, the planned introduction of communication-based train control, rollout of a digital payment system to replace the MetroCard, to the replacement of key bus routes with more efficient select bus service, the agency promises better service. However, New Yorkers are used to receiving promises from the MTA, with results not arriving for potentially over a decade later. So for now, the city is prepared to brace. Frequent, spontaneous delays inside aging cars and stations. When change does come, only two things are certain. They will be late and largely over budget. If you like this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you want to support more content like this, consider supporting us through Patreon, PayPal, or by shopping with our Amazon affiliate link. Links are in the video description below.